Hey guys, tonight we're traveling back to the banks of the Nile, where the air smells like baking bread, hot sand, and, surprisingly, honey-soaked linen bandages. You're standing in Thebes 1500 BCE, where dentistry isn't just about fixing teeth, it's about survival. And let's be honest, if you time-traveled here right now, your modern mouth would be a disaster. No toothpaste, no floss, just grit, determination, and the occasional accidental mouthful of desert wind. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're not just a visitor here, you're a patient. The sun is high, the flies are relentless, and your tooth, oh it aches. Not the dull throb of a modern cavity, but the kind of pain that makes you consider yanking it out with a pair of pliers, which, spoiler, some people did. But lucky for you, Egyptian dentistry is weirdly advanced. Mainstream fact: the Egyptians were the first civilization to have identifiable dentists, actual professionals who treated gum disease, filled cavities, and even crafted rudimentary bridges. But here's the quirky tidbit. Some of their pain remedies involved tying a dead mouse to your jaw. Historians still argue whether this was symbolic magic or just really bad advice. And then there's honey. Golden, sticky, and here's the kicker, antibacterial. They packed it into wounds, smeared it on gums, and even used it to stabilize loose teeth. Meanwhile, gold wasn't just for pharaohs' tombs. It was for their molars, too. The rich got gold wire to hold their teeth together, while the poor, well, let's just say linen thread had to do. The pain hits you like a rogue Nile crocodile. Sharp, sudden, and entirely unfair. You clutch your jaw, fingers pressing into the swollen flesh beneath your cheekbone. No ibuprofen here, no ice packs, just the grim reality of ancient toothache management. Around you, the bustling streets of Thebes continue as if nothing is wrong. A merchant hawks dates, children chase a scrappy dog through the dust, and somewhere in the distance, a priest chants hymns to Sekhmet, the lioness goddess of healing and plagues. Ironic, really. Your options? Limited. You could bite down on a scrap of linen soaked in honey and crushed garlic, which, yes, will make your breath smell like a mummy's curse, but it might numb the throbbing. Or you could visit one of the rare IMYRSW&W, the overseers of teeth, who operate somewhere between physicians and magicians. But let's be honest, you're more likely to end up in the care of a local barber surgeon, whose tools include flint scrapers, bronze probes, and a disconcerting lack of sterilization. Mainstream fact: the Ebers Papyrus, one of the oldest medical texts in existence, lists over 700 remedies, including 11 specifically for toothaches. Quirky tidbit: one cure involves rubbing a fried earthworm on your gums. Historians still argue whether this was meant to distract you from the pain or if they genuinely believed worms had healing properties. And then there's the great crocodile dung debate. Some scrolls mention it as a dental remedy, but here's the thing. It was likely used for fillings, not pain relief. Imagine explaining that to your dentist today. Yes, just pack the cavity with Nile mud and herb paste, and maybe a little fermented dung for good measure. The honey jar in your hands feels sticky and warm from the Egyptian sun as you dip your fingers in, scooping out a thick golden glob. It smells like clover and dust. Nothing like the processed sweetness you're used to back home. As you press it gingerly against your throbbing gum, you notice something odd. The pain actually lessens. Not dramatically, not magically, but enough to make you wonder if these ancient people stumbled onto something modern medicine took centuries to rediscover. Turns out, honey wasn't just a sweet treat along the Nile. It was a medical powerhouse. The Egyptians didn't know about bacteria, but they knew this. Wounds treated with honey rarely festered. So they slathered it on burns, packed it into deep cuts, and yes, pressed it against infected gums. Some temple inscriptions even suggest they mixed it with crushed barley and resin to make primitive healing gum for toothaches. Historians still argue whether this was early dentistry or just a desperate attempt at ancient chewing tobacco. Mainstream fact: honey's antibacterial properties come from its low water content, high acidity, and the presence of hydrogen
honey's
peroxide.
antibacterial
All things
properties
that
come
prevent
from its low
microbial
water
growth.
content,
Quirky
high
tidbit:
acidity,
certain
and the presence
Egyptian
of
honey
hydrogen
recipes
peroxide, all
included
things
fermented
that
fish
prevent
oil for extra
microbial
potency.
growth.
We'll never
Quirky
know
tidbit:
if it worked
certain
better,
Egyptian honey
because
recipes
frankly,
included
no modern
fermented
researcher
fish
has been
oil for
brave
extra
enough to
potency.
recreate it.
Wealthy Egyptians
Meanwhile,
with loose
across
or
the
missing
river
teeth
in the
could
Palace
get them
district,
stabilized with
gold is being
bands,
hammered into
an early
delicate
form of
wires,
dental bridging.
not for
It
jewelry,
wasn't perfect,
but for
it
teeth.
beat the alternative.
Wealthy Egyptians with
letting
loose
teeth
or missing
wobble out
teeth
like
could
date
get them
pits.
stabilized
We'll never
with gold
know if it
bands,
worked better,
an early
because
form
frankly,
of dental bridging.
no modern
It wasn't
researcher has
perfect,
been brave
and
enough
occasionally
to
resulted
recreate
in a
it.
nobleman
Meanwhile,
accidentally swallowing
across
his
the
own
river in the
bridge during
Palace
dinner.
district, gold
But it
is
beat
being
the
hammered
alternative,
into delicate wires,
letting
not
teeth
for
wobble out
jewelry,
like date
but
pits.
for teeth.
The goldsmith's workshop smells of charcoal and hot metal as you watch him carefully twist a thin strand of gold between calloused fingers. This isn't jewelry in the making, it's dental work. A nobleman from the court of Amenhotep sits patiently, his mouth propped open with a wedge of acacia wood, while the craftsman loops the precious metal around two still solid teeth. You can't decide what's more impressive: the fact that they're performing what amounts to ancient cosmetic dentistry, or that the patient isn't screaming. Though the honey-soaked linen stuffed in his cheeks might be helping. Gold in Egyptian dentistry wasn't just about vanity, it was practical. Unlike iron, which rusts, or copper, which turns your saliva bitter, gold was biocompatible. It didn't irritate the gums, and with careful hammering, it could be shaped to hold loose teeth in place or even replace missing ones. The wealthy might have their bridges decorated with tiny scarabs or lotus motifs, because if you're going to invest in dental work, why not make it fashionable? Mainstream fact: the earliest known dental bridge was found in an Egyptian mummy from around 1500 BCE, gold wire holding together teeth that would have otherwise been lost. Quirky tidbit: some Egyptologists suspect the gold was sometimes recycled from older jewelry, meaning your great-grandmother's bracelet might have ended up in your mouth. Historians still argue whether this was thrifty or just unsettling. And then there's the crocodile dung debate, because of course there is. While some texts mention it in dental contexts, it was likely used as a filling material mixed with resin and honey, not as a painkiller. Still, imagine the sales pitch. Yes, this will plug the hole in your tooth. No, don't ask what's in it. You're sitting in the shade of a palm frond awning, watching a harried mother bribe her wailing child with a lump of honeycomb, the ancient Egyptian equivalent of a lollipop at the dentist's office. The kid gnaws on it greedily, golden syrup dripping down his chin, blissfully unaware that this sticky treat is probably saving his teeth rather than rotting them. Because here's the irony: while honey was their go-to remedy for infections, the real culprit behind tooth decay wasn't sugar, it was bread. Not the soft, pre-sliced loaves you're used to, but coarse, gritty flatbreads baked with desert sand still clinging to the grain. Every bite was like chewing on fine sandpaper, wearing down enamel until teeth were little more than sensitive stumps. Archaeologists have found mummies with teeth eroded down to the roots, their jaws locked in what must have been a lifetime of wincing. Mainstream fact: Egyptian bread contains so much abrasive grit that anthropologists can actually track the rise of dental problems alongside the expansion of large-scale grain processing. Quirky tidbit: some workers apparently used their worn-down teeth as tools, evidenced by peculiar grooves found on ancient molars. Historians still argue whether this was practical adaptation or just really bad life choices. And then there's the curious case of the pyramid builders' dental records. Skeletons from workers' cemeteries show surprisingly good teeth, not because they had better dentistry, but because they ate less of that fancy, sand-filled nobleman's bread. Their simpler diet of vegetables, fish, and the occasional beer might have saved them from the pharaoh's painful fate. The scent of burning herbs mixes with the metallic tang of blood as you step into the dim confines of an Egyptian dental workshop. A patient reclines on a wooden bench, gripping the edges so tightly his knuckles have turned white. The IMYR SW&W, overseer of teeth, pries open his mouth with a bronze spatula, revealing a molar dark with decay. You expect primitive brutality, but what happens next surprises you. The dentist reaches not for pliers, but for a reed pen and papyrus. He's writing a prescription. Egyptian dentistry wasn't just about yanking teeth. It was a sophisticated system blending medicine, magic, and meticulous record-keeping. The same scribes who documented grain stores and temple offerings also kept dental case histories. Some papyri even include follow-up notes like, "Patient returned, swelling reduced, honey poultice continued." They had treatment plans, pain management strategies, and surprisingly, referrals to specialist priests when a toothache was deemed the work of angry spirits. The Edwin Smith Papyrus contains the world's first documented dental treatments, including instructions for stabilizing loose teeth with linen and resin. Quirky tidbit: some dental prescriptions required ingredients to be gathered at specific moon phases, because nothing says evidence-based medicine like timing your tooth extraction with the lunar cycle. Historians still argue whether this was superstition or early recognition of lunar tidal effects on pain perception. And then there's the curious case of the world's oldest known dental prosthesis, a 4,500-year-old bridge made of gold wire and a donor tooth, found still securely attached in a mummy's jaw. The real mystery: whether the tooth came from a slave, a paid donor, or, well, let's just say grave robbery wasn't unheard of. The flickering oil lamp casts dancing shadows across the temple walls as you watch a priest-dentist prepare his most controversial remedy. On the stone slab before him, a dried mouse, a lump of resin, and a clay jar labeled in hieroglyphs that roughly translate to "do not open during festivals." This, apparently, is state-of-the-art dental care circa 1350 BCE. You can't decide what's more shocking, that they used dead rodents as medicine, or that this might actually be an upgrade from the crocodile dung treatments. Welcome to the weird crossroads of Egyptian dentistry and theology, where every toothache might be punishment from the gods. The priest chants softly as he grinds the mouse into powder, mixing it with honey and myrrh. According to the Ebers Papyrus, this concoction should be applied directly to the gums while reciting a spell to Sekhmet. The logic: if a lioness goddess could both cause and cure plagues, maybe she could handle your cavities too. Over 20% of Egyptian medical treatments included some form of incantation, with dental spells being among the most elaborate. Quirky tidbit: some prescriptions required the dentist to spit on the affected tooth 4 times, not for hygiene, but because saliva was believed to carry healing power. Historians still argue whether this was early understanding of enzymes or just really committed performance medicine. And then there's the mummy of Amenhotep III, whose autopsy revealed a surprising dental secret. Someone had stuffed linen soaked in juniper oil into his empty tooth sockets post-mortem. Was this ceremonial? Practical? Or did some embalmer just really hate the smell of decay? The answer, like so much of Egyptian dentistry, remains deliciously mysterious. The marketplace hums with activity as you pass a stall where a merchant proudly displays rows of ivory and bone fragments. Not jewelry or tools, but replacement teeth. For the right price, you could walk away with a slightly used canine or molar, ready to be wired into your gaping smile. The concept makes your modern sensibilities recoil, but to Egyptians, this was perfectly logical. Why waste good teeth when someone else, willing or not, no longer needed theirs? Egyptian dental prosthetics walked a fine line between innovation and grave robbery. Wealthy clients might receive teeth from donors, living or deceased, while the desperate sometimes turned to animal teeth, though chewing with a hippo's incisor proved problematic. The real masterpieces were the gold-banded bridges holding these transplants in place. Some so precisely fitted they remained intact for millennia in mummies' jaws. The earliest known dental implant comes from ancient Egypt, a copper peg hammered into the jawbone of a 4,000-year-old mummy. Quirky tidbit: some dental workshops kept tooth ledgers tracking which graves produced the best quality donations. Historians still argue whether this counts as early recycling or just morbid entrepreneurship. And then there's the case of the singing mummy, a noblewoman whose autopsy revealed a silver-capped front tooth. When researchers tapped it, the metal rang with a clear musical tone. Was this decorative? Functional? Or did some dentist 3,000 years ago discover that oral care could be literally symphonic? The Nile breeze carries the scent of baking bread as you watch a scribe pause mid-scroll to rub his jaw, an all-too-familiar gesture of dental distress. His colleagues call it hieroglyphic hunch, the occupational hazard of leaning over papyrus all day with your teeth clenched in concentration. But what really destroyed Egyptian scribes' teeth wasn't stress. It was their ink. That beautiful black pigment they used for important documents, a toxic cocktail of soot, gum arabic, and lead. Every time a scribe licked his brush to sharpen the point, a habit as common then as clicking pens is today, he ingested trace amounts of heavy metals. Modern analysis of scribal mummies shows telltale lead deposits in their dental calculus, along with surprisingly advanced gum disease for 30-year-olds. The Egyptians invented the first lead-based ink around 3200 BCE, revolutionizing record-keeping while accidentally poisoning their literati. Quirky tidbit: some scribes chewed natron-soaked linen to relieve tooth pain, creating history's first recorded chewable antacid. Historians still argue whether this was medicinal genius or just swapping one toxin for another. And then there's the mystery of the green teeth. Several high-status mummies were found with emerald-hued molars, not from decay, but from malachite powder deliberately packed into cavities. Was this early fillings, religious symbolism, or the ancient equivalent of blinged-out grills? The answer may be all three. The flickering torchlight reveals a scene straight out of a dental horror story. A patient strapped to a wooden chair, their mouth forced open with a bronze gag as the IMW prepares his tools. But wait, that's not a drill in his hand. It's a bow. Egyptian dentistry's most terrifying innovation wasn't brute force. It was mechanical ingenuity. By 1500 BCE, some practitioners had developed an early drill using a bowstring wrapped around a rotating shaft, its flint or bronze tip capable of boring into decayed teeth. The sound alone, a high-pitched whirring mixed with the patient's muffled screams, would haunt your dreams. But here's the twist. This torture actually saved lives. Removing infected pulp could prevent abscesses from spreading to the brain, a common cause of death in antiquity. These bow drills were adapted from woodworking tools, proving Egyptians repurposed technology across fields. Quirky tidbit: some patients were given a pre-procedure anesthetic of opium-laced wine. Though judging by skeletal remains, many still bit through their leather mouth straps. Historians still argue whether the drilling or the hangover was worse. And then there's the mystery tool found in Tutankhamun's tomb, a delicate bronze instrument with a tiny scoop end. For decades it was labeled a cosmetic spoon, until a dentist recognized it. The world's first dental excavator, perfect for scraping out decay. Turns out even the boy king needed the occasional cavity filled. The evening air hangs heavy with the scent of roasting garlic as you observe a dental patient's peculiar pre-appointment ritual, chewing an entire bulb of the pungent herb before letting the dentist probe their mouth. At first, you assume this is some form of ancient breath freshener, until you notice the practitioner nodding in approval at the patient's garlic-reddened gums. This isn't about masking odors. It's about science, Egyptian style. Garlic's antibacterial properties, which modern studies confirm, made it a staple in dental care. Crushed cloves mixed with honey created a primitive antiseptic paste, while chewing it raw may have temporarily numbed throbbing nerves. The downside? Entire neighborhoods knew when someone had a toothache. Some temple records even mention priests complaining about devotees' healing breath during ceremonies. The Ebers Papyrus lists garlic in over 20 dental remedies, often combined with cumin or fenugreek. Quirky tidbit: wealthy Egyptians sometimes gilded garlic cloves with gold leaf before swallowing them whole, the ancient equivalent of enteric-coated pills. Historians still argue whether this was medicinal or just conspicuous consumption. And then there's the curious case of the singing onion, a remedy that involved stuffing a hollowed-out onion with natron and resin, then inhaling the fumes through the nose while humming. Whether this treated sinus infections or just made people forget their tooth pain remains unclear. The rhythmic clink-clink of a pestle grinding against mortar draws your attention to a corner of the temple complex, where an apprentice prepares a batch of toothpaste, Egyptian style. The mixture looks suspiciously like powdered ox hooves and burnt eggshells, which, you soon learn, is exactly what it is. This abrasive concoction was their version of crest, applied with frayed twigs that functioned as early toothbrushes. Surprisingly, some recipes even included mint for fresh breath, proving ancient people cared about more than just functional dentistry. But here's the catch. While the wealthy scrubbed their teeth with these fancy pastes, commoners made do with Nile mud and their fingers. Archaeologists have found distinct wear patterns on working-class teeth, suggesting they used their nails to scrape off plaque, a practice that probably did more harm than good. The world's oldest known toothpaste recipe comes from a 4th century Egyptian papyrus, mixing salt, pepper, mint, and dried iris flowers. Quirky tidbit: some dental abrasives included powdered mouse bones, because nothing says pearly whites like rodent remains. Historians still argue whether this was symbolic magic or a misguided calcium supplement. And then there's the mystery of the singing toothpicks, slivers of aromatic wood that reportedly produced musical tones when struck against teeth. Were these early dental instruments, religious objects, or just the ancient version of fidget toys? The scent of melting beeswax mixes with the iron tang of blood as you witness dentistry's most paradoxical procedure. A healer carefully pouring liquid gold into a freshly extracted tooth socket. This isn't decoration. It's an attempt to cauterize the wound and prevent infection, a practice so advanced it wouldn't be matched in Europe for another 3,000 years. The patient, a merchant who traded Nubian ebony, grips the arms of his chair as the molten metal hisses against raw flesh. His scream is mercifully muffled by the honey-soaked linen gag between his teeth. Egyptian oral surgery walked a razor's edge between brutality and brilliance. They understood the concept of sterilization, hence the boiling gold, but lacked anesthesia beyond alcohol and wishful thinking. They could perform delicate gum grafts using linen sutures, yet still believed toothworms caused cavities. It was a world where one practitioner might use precise bronze scalpels while another recommended chanting spells to the moon. The Smith Papyrus describes a gum surgery technique involving lifting flaps of tissue to drain abscesses, a method still used today. Quirky tidbit: some dental kits included magic bone set sticks carved from hippo femurs, which were rubbed on swollen jaws. Historians still argue whether this was placebo effect or if hippo bone actually contained anti-inflammatory compounds. And then there's the mummy of a teenage girl found with a palm fiber tampon packed in her empty tooth socket. Either the world's first dental dressing or evidence that ancient practitioners sometimes repurposed materials in alarming ways. The flicker of oil lamps dances across the temple walls as you observe a dental consultation unlike any other. The patient isn't human. A prized greyhound whimpers on the limestone table while the IMYRSW&W examines its cracked canine tooth. With surprising gentleness, the practitioner prepares a poultice of honey and crushed lotus petals, murmuring reassurances to the anxious owner. Animal dentistry in ancient Egypt wasn't just practiced. It was remarkably sophisticated, especially for creatures deemed sacred or valuable. Dogs, cats, even baboons received dental care ranging from simple extractions to gold wire stabilizations. Falconry birds had their beaks filed smooth, while temple crocodiles, yes, the massive man-eating ones, underwent periodic tooth inspections. The logic was practical. A sacred cat with toothache couldn't properly guard grain stores, and a falcon with beak problems was useless for hunting. Mummified pets often show signs of dental intervention, including a 2,500-year-old lion cub with filed-down fangs, likely to make temple life safer. Quirky tidbit: some veterinary prescriptions called for rubbing donkey milk on a dog's gums, an early attempt at calcium treatment. Historians still argue whether this was nutritional science or just really creative guesswork. And then there's the mystery of the singing scarab, a beetle-shaped dental tool found in a veterinarian's tomb that produced musical tones when spun. Was this an early anesthesia distraction technique? A tuning device for incantations? Or just an ancient dentist's whimsical paperweight? The golden light of dusk filters through papyrus curtains as your journey through Egyptian dentistry winds down. You watch a tired healer clean his bronze tools in vinegar, one of the first known antiseptics, while his assistant sweeps discarded linen bandages into a basket. Somewhere in the distance, a mother sings to her child about the tooth mouse, ancient Egypt's version of the tooth fairy, and for a moment, the whole scene feels strangely familiar. 3,000 years separate you from these people, yet their struggles with pain, their inventive solutions, even their dental anxieties mirror your own. Egyptian dentistry was a tapestry of contradictions. Brutal yet delicate, scientific yet mystical. They could stabilize a fractured jaw with linen straps and resin, then prescribe chanting to Thoth for good measure. Their honey poultices prefigured antibiotic ointments by millennia, while their belief in toothworms lingered into the 18th century. Perhaps that's why their legacy endures, not because they had all the answers, but because they asked the right questions with whatever tools they had. Mainstream fact: over 1,000 Egyptian dental artifacts survive today, from flint scrapers to gold bridges. Quirky tidbit: some dental kits included lucky crocodile teeth, meant to be rubbed by patients during procedures. Historians still argue whether this was psychological comfort or an early form of pain transference magic. As the last light fades, imagine all those ancient smiles. Some gap-toothed from bread grit, others gleaming with gold wire, all part of dentistry's origin story. Let your breathing slow, your thoughts drift like Nile silt settling in still water. The night has grown quiet now. The only sounds the distant chirp of crickets and the soft lap of water against reed boats. Picture those Egyptian dentists lighting their final oil lamps, storing their honey jars and gold wire for tomorrow's patients. Their world feels both impossibly distant and strangely close. After all, pain is timeless, and so is the relief from it. Breathe in the imagined scent of Nile water and myrrh, the metallic tang of bronze tools being put away, the faint sweetness of honey lingering in clay pots. Let your muscles relax as you consider how far dentistry has come, and yet how much remains unchanged. The fear of the drill, the gratitude for pain relief, the universal desire to keep our smiles intact. As sleep draws nearer, release each thought like a lotus petal floating downstream. The golden bridges, the singing scarabs, the mice ground into medicine. They're all part of history's long, slow exhale now. Just as you, listening here in the modern dark, are part of its next breath. Let your eyelids grow heavy as the last image fades. A single honeybee, buzzing lazily through an Egyptian garden, carrying on its work as it has for millennia, unaware it's been part of dentistry all along.